Welcome to the Brand Gravity Show, where we explore the intersection between branding and psychology. I'm your host, psychology-driven brand strategist, Kaye Putnam. Today's guest is absolutely fascinating and is going to help us dive into the psychology behind incentives. Incentives are really interesting as a brand because we all want to reward our best customers. We want to dissuade people from taking actions that are harmful to our business. And many of us turn to incentive programs to help us motivate our audience in one direction or the other. But author Uri Gneezy, who we're going to introduce here in just a second, details in his newest book, Mixed Signals, about how our incentive programs can actually go wrong. Uri Gneezy is the Epstein Atkinson Endowed Chair in Behavioral Economics and professor at the Rady School of Management at the University of California, San Diego. He received his bachelor's in economics at Tel Aviv University and Ph.D. in economics at Tilburg University. Gneezy joined UC San Diego in 2006. Prior to that, he was a university at the University of Chicago, the Technion, and the University of Haifa. He was a visiting scholar at the University of Amsterdam, Bergen, and the Burgundy School of Business. As a researcher, Gneezy focuses on putting behavioral economics to work in the real world, where theory can meet application. He's looking for basic research as well as more applied approaches to the study of when and why incentives don't work. His research covers topics such as incentives-based interventions to increase good habits and decrease bad ones, gender differences in reaction to incentives, and how incentives affect deception and ethical behavior in general. In addition to the traditional laboratory and field studies, he's working with firms on using basic findings from behavioral economics to help companies achieve their traditional goals in non-traditional ways. Gneezy's research includes over 100 peer-reviewed journal articles, for which he won the most highly cited researcher prize for the last 8 years. He's a co-author with John List of the international bestseller, The Y-Axis: Hidden Motives and the Undiscovered Economics of Everyday Life. Let's get to the conversation. All right, Uri, thank you so much for making the time to chat with us here on the Brand Gravity Show today. I would love to start. What inspired you to write Mixed Signals?
Well, I'm 55 and doing research on incentives for the last almost 30 years now, and I needed to do something different. I could have, bought a Lamborghini, red Lamborghini or something like that, other kind of crisis, and I chose to write the book. And on a serious note, we are busy talking with 200 friends over scientific journals. And it's a very interesting challenge to try and get the word, to spread the word out. And some people were extremely successful in this. I'm trying to. I think that it's very interesting and very nice to try and get the word out.
Can you give us an example of a mixed signal when it comes to incentive, like where a company intended to implement an incentive for one reason, but actually had a different effect?
Right. So in the book, I talk about many of those, of course.
Yeah.
That's the title, right?
Yeah.
So the first one that comes to mind is think about bus companies. In Tel Aviv, where I spend a lot of time, next to our home, there is a street with two companies that work over there. One pays the drivers according to the number of passengers they pick up, and the other one pays the drivers per hour. And you can immediately know which bus is which, right? Because the drivers that are paid per hours, they drive polite, they drive safely, they're not aggressive. Whereas the drivers that are paid per rider, they drive like crazy. They strategize, they try to pass, they go, So I think that it's interesting just to look at this and see the difference. Just a small incentive, you would think that it's not going to be that different. It has a huge difference. Mm-hmm. Now, the company always says, look, safety is our number one priority, and we want customer service. But then if they pay the drivers per passenger, the drivers are not going to be polite and nice and behave like they should, right? So that's an example of a mixed signal, telling them be safe, but then paying them per passenger. Fortunately, there are ways to solve this kind of problems. So Uber and other rideshare companies found a very nice additional incentives because they are paid per passenger that they have, right? If you're an Uber driver, it depends on how many passenger you pick up and how long they go. But so in principle, they could have been very aggressive, drive not in a safe way. But because they have the rating system, that changed everything, right? Because now the driver knows if I'll be aggressive, if I won't be polite, if the car will be dirty, they'll give me a bad rating and I'm going to suffer later on. So the rideshare companies were smart enough to add another incentive that cost them nothing, but really solves this problem. I don't know about your experience, but mine is always nicer in a rideshare, in Uber or Lyft, than in a regular taxi. Regular taxi is definitely not as nice as those. So.
100%. 100%. I think another example that you share in the book that I found fascinating was that people aren't always influenced as much as we think by economic incentives. I believe the story that you told related to blood donation, where
Right.
humans sometimes are even more influenced by social norms or by signaling. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. So we talk about signaling to others. So many of the things that we do is because we want to impress other people. It could be our neighbors, our friend. We do stuff to impress people. That's not new. Turns out that much of it we also do to impress ourselves. So we don't know, you don't know how good you are, whatever you defined as good. I don't know how good I am. So I look at my actions and I learn from it about myself. It's called self-signaling. Let me give you an example and then we'll get to the blood donation. Imagine that you live in a very cold place. In the morning you see your neighbor walking to the recycle center with a large bag with 100 soda cans. What are you going to think about her?
You're like, wow, yep, she's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. She's amazing. I mean, she's doing it. She's probably going to think like that about herself, right? She's a good person. That's what you think about her. That's the signaling to others. What she's going to think about herself. That's signaling to the self. Now imagine that you live in a place where she gets 5 cents for every soda can that she recycles. Now, for $5, really? You're that cheap, right? And also the way she would think about herself. Now she doesn't think anymore that she does it because she cares about the environment. She thinks she does it for the $5 and it's not worth $5. So it's an example where adding an incentive really is really bad. So think about the blood donation example that you said. Many of us donate blood. That's a huge, you can call it industry. So blood is being sold downstream to many, so hospitals and many other places buy the blood. There is lots of demand for it, but you can't pay the donors. And why can't you pay the donors? So imagine that. So think about two people. Again, like the neighbor example, one of them goes and donate the blood. Well, I spent half a day, going there. This needle, it's not a fun thing, which could be actually good because now I can feel about myself, look, I'm a good person. Uri, you did well. You went, you gave blood. Good for you. Might even mention it to my friends at work. Well, sorry, I missed this meeting. I had to go and donate blood because, I'm a great person, right? That's good. Now imagine that you are paid $50 for doing this. Same scenario, but they offer you $50. $50 is not 5 cents. It's money, but I will not spend half a day for $50. That's not worth it, right? And the other people will not think that I'm a good guy if I'll be paid. So now you have to become creative in the way you design the incentives. So you can think about maybe pay them for, getting there, right? So $50 to use Uber or something like that. Another one that I really like is say that I can give you a coffee mug with a blood bank logo on it. Now every morning that you'll go to work, you'll drink, you'll say, oh, wow, Uber, you're a good guy. You donated blood, right? I'll remind myself. And I can also go to meetings and put it on the table so everyone will know that I'm a good guy, right? I don't have to tell them. So the way you design the incentive could be important.
Yeah, there's tons of implication here for brand builders and entrepreneurs, especially if your business is in a space where people are proud of doing business with you. Just having that symbolism or that signal, that physical signal that somebody has worked with you or done the thing could be a really fantastic strategy. Speaking of, are there specific industries or situations where incentives work the best that you found?
So if I can measure your output, I can very precisely measure what you're doing. So say that there is only one dimension. I don't care about quality. You are putting together some kind of assembly, and the more you get, the better it is, then it's fine. So if I can really measure it very precisely, I can pay you like this. That works very well. Another one is when I want to have one-time change. So if I want you to do one thing, I can pay you money, you'll do it, and that's fine. After that, I don't care. So imagine that. So I wrote a book, right? I write all day, and I type like this, one finger at a time. If someone would have paid me enough to learn how to do touch typing, spend a week learning how to do that would have saved so much time for me later on, right? But I didn't do it because I'm stupid. No one ever paid me, so I don't do it. But the idea is that once you do it, you don't forget it. So that's another place where incentives are really useful.
The example that came to my mind as I was reading was, would you call a loyalty program that a brand implements an incentive?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. And so if somebody wanted to create a loyalty program, how would they go about this? What principles would they need to apply, and how would they improve it over time or know if it's actually working?
So the best one, I think, is the programs that airlines have. So I'm a United guy because in San Diego, where I live, it's a United hub, so I have to use United. I imagine that I have to go to San Francisco. There are 10 different options. Someone invites me to San Francisco. I have 10 different options. I'm not going to look for the cheapest one. I'm going to use United because United, I'll get the miles. Plus, they treat me better if there is a problem because I fly a lot with them.
Yeah.
Right. So this loyalty program really changes. And the fact that I'm choosing which flight to fly, but someone else is paying, that's genius, right? That's really clever, right? And I think so that's an example where something, but in general, in many cases, it's really bad for customers because it prevents you from switching. For example, early on with the cell phone, if you were Horizon customer and you wanted to move to T-Mobile, you had to change your number. And no one did it because, you're not going to change your number. But so there was, the Congress said, no, people can keep their numbers. And that really allowed much more competition between companies.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I were designing a loyalty program for, say, a hospitality brand, how would I decide how much of the incentive should be monetary or how much of it should be something else, something that's more intrinsic, that, the signaling that we were talking about? How do we test that?
Right. So there is something that is called mental accounting. That's not every payment is the same for me, right? So if say that you go to a restaurant, the valet costs $30. That's really, really annoying. I can go around for half an hour. Then I'm not going to be, when I drink wine, I'm not going to care about this $30. But the money for parking is really annoying, right? So not every cost is as, annoying as the other. So with hotels, for example, they can give you, say, money back, or they can give you champagne in the afternoon or something nice like that you will remember and you'll appreciate it much more. And I think that that's the right way to go. So not money, because money is fungible. You'll think about it as part of everything that your entire budget. But if inviting for the lunch for champagne and cheese in the afternoon, that's something that you're going to remember. So those are the kind of incentives that I would strongly suggest.
And that's such a win-win for both the brand and the customer then, because it's not something that costs as much on a apples to apples basis, but it's something that actually creates more of an impact in the mind of the consumer. That's incredible.
And you're going to remember it, right? As a customer, you're going to remember how nice they were to you.
Yes. I think another story that you shared in the book that I loved was about Redfin, and it was along these same lines. They were giving a discount, I think, on their closing costs. Right. But I was contrasting that to an experience that I've had a few times with our bank, which is USA. And they did exactly what you suggested in the book, which was they gave a gift certificate at the end of the transaction, not towards the house purchase because it was such a small percentage.
Yes.
But towards like Home Depot or Lowe's or one of
Perfect. Yes. Very smart of them. So the idea is that, imagine that you go to buy a mouse for your computer. It costs $100, you go, or $50, say. The guy that sells you this say, you know what, there is one, if you go 10 minutes, there is one they have a special discount, half price, right? $25. I'll go. If you buy a laptop that costs $2,500 and now they say you can go over there and get $25, you'll say it's not important. Same is true for the housing, like you said. if you give me a discount on $1 million house, a discount of $500, it's going to go in the give me $500 for Home Depot, like you said, that I'm going to remember. That's something I'll go to Home Depot. I will really remember that I got it. That's a mental accounting example. Perfect.
Yes. Amazing. So we've been talking about a couple examples of this, but are there any other common pitfalls or misconceptions that people have when they're implementing incentive programs?
So I think that if there is one thing to take out of the book, which is not maybe a good thing to say, because then you'll say, why do I need to buy the book? Have a common sense officer in the company, right? So especially if you're engineers or economists, right? These people tend to be, I'm one of them, right? We tend to be, we look at people as, oh, that's what a rational person will do, and that's what they'll do. No, people are much more complex than that. Have a common sense person that will say, you have CEO, CFO, have a common sense, whatever officer over there that will tell you, look, that's really stupid. Don't do it this way. I have this example about Coca-Cola. The CEO of Coca-Cola had a great idea. Usually they charge on a vending machine $1 per soda can. He said on a hot day when people want more, let's charge $1.50. That makes sense. Lots of economic sense. Airlines do it. Hotels do it. When there is more demand, you ask, what can go wrong? Of course, people got upset with this. So, why are you taking advantage of us when it's hot outside? What he should have said is the regular price is $1.50. On a cold day, you'll get a discount of 50 cents. No one is going to be upset with the discount, right? I'm not going to be upset with the discount. And the AMC Theater did the same a couple of months ago. They decided that they said, look, inflation, blah, blah, we need to raise prices. So the idea was to charge more for seats, for premium seats. So if you want to sit in a good seat in the theater, they're going to charge you more. And that's what they said. Look, because of inflation, we're going to charge more for, again, people got upset. What they should have said is, look, we're sorry, inflation, cost of labor, whatever, we have to raise prices. However, we care about you, so we're going to give you a discount if you're willing to sit in the first row or on the sides, right? So it's exactly the same economic outcome, but very different story.
Oh, yes, that's fantastic.
So have common sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I absolutely recommend buying the book. The stories, and it was so well written. You did such a great job of illustrating all of the points as you go through them.
You made my morning, so we can stop here maybe.
Yeah, and we're done. Mic drop. Amazing. We're going to get right back to the interview. For the next few seconds, I'm going to share with you my Brand Clarity Collective and how it can help you grow your income and impact. If you're an entrepreneur who feels stuck or uncertain about what makes your brand stand out, then this is for you. The Brand Clarity Collective is a mastermind multiplied by mentorship. It's part online curriculum, part digital mastermind, and it's designed to help you get crystal clear brand clarity so you attract more perfect clients and grow your business. We have a thriving community of entrepreneurs who are all smart and driven. As a member of the collective, you get an all-access pass to all of my best branding courses, as well as access to our private community where you can connect with like-minded entrepreneurs and get feedback and support directly from me on our coaching calls. The Brand Clarity Collective is priced at just $297 per month, and after 6 months, you keep lifetime access to all of the courses. To learn more and to see if it's right for you, head over to my homepage at kayeputnam.com. There's a big section where you can click to learn more. I'll also include the link in the show notes wherever you are listening or watching. All right, let's get back. So another thing that I've actually been struggling with as an entrepreneur. So you talk about deterrence and fines in the book as well. It's like the opposite of an incentive, right? And one example that's particularly relevant to a lot of the clients and students that I work with are they're working with clients and they're trying to, like dissuade them from certain activities. So for example, if somebody's doing a project, they want to encourage clients to approve the work faster and not have like unlimited rounds of revisions, or they don't want to have this scope creep that can happen with clients adding in more stuff. So sometimes they'll add in a fee or a charge. Is there anything that you recommend that entrepreneurs think about when they're adding in something like that to their process?
Right. So, by the way, I look at fines also as incentives. So incentives could be positive or negative. So, the way I see it, right? And the point is, when you introduce a fine, you need to be careful that you are not changing the perception of why people are doing what they're doing. So, one of my first experiments was about a daycare in Israel. So, our kids went to the daycare over there, and you had to pick up your kids by 4 p.m. And at the time, we live in a suburb of Tel Aviv. So, we went to lunch in Tel Aviv. I remember driving like crazy because you have to pick up the kids by 4 p.m. Then the principal introduced a $3 fine for parents who came 10 minutes late. Again, we were in Tel Aviv, again late, but this time I didn't drive like crazy because why would I risk my life for $3, right? So then Aldo Ristokini and I did run an experiment with daycares like this, in which there was no fine. Then in some of them we introduced a fine, and in some of them we took away the fine. What we found is that once you introduced the fine, actually more parents came late in these daycares because now they said, look, before that I didn't know how bad it is. Now I know that it's $3 fine, $3 bad, I can do it, right? And when we removed the fine, the daycares that had the fine before the parents continue to come late because now they know how bad it is, right? So that's something that you need to be careful with when you introduce fines. So say that you need to, I work a lot with co-authors, right? So I promise to do something by the next week, and I'll try to do it because I feel it feels bad if you don't, right? Now imagine that there is some kind of fine that I have to give. It won't be money with co-authors, but instead of writing 10,000 words, or 1,000 words, I'll have to write 1,100 words. Then I'll do it, then it's not that bad, right? So I'm not going to feel. So the idea is that instead of feeling bad for not doing something on time, like in your example, now I can say, well, I'll pay the fine and then it's okay. So the fine becomes a price that we really need. So you have to be careful. Now, if the fine is large enough, so imagine in the daycare example, in one of the places in France, if you didn't pick up your kid on time, they took the kid to the police station and you had to pick them up from there. Yeah. That's bad, right? Yeah. Imagine that you can execute the parents that come late. That's going to work, right? Yeah. But so there is a balance over here. If the negative side will be large enough, it's going to work. But in many cases, you don't want to do it. You don't want to punish the people you're working with.
Yeah, exactly. You want to maintain a positive relationship, but
yes,
you do want it to be large enough so that it just doesn't become a cost of making that decision. That's fantastic. So you also studied gender differences in reactions to incentives. How can this knowledge help entrepreneurs tailor their strategies to better target different segments of their audience? Can you tell us more about what you found?
So more generally, when we talk about incentives, it's not that the same incentive will work on you or on me or on my kids, or everyone has something that they care about. If you care about the environment, I'll design different incentives for the environment than if you drive a large pickup. If you drive a large pickup, I'll raise the price of fuel. If you care about the environment, I'll give you more, better cars, maybe more efficient cars. So there are different incentives that you need to do. And gender is one of them. So the research shows that we are doing this kind of research for over 20 years now, that men react more strongly to competition. Men like to compete more and react more to competition. You can think about different reasons. And it's not clear which part of it is born and which. So it's the nature versus nurture story, right? So I have 3 kids. We bought the same toys to them. Our girls so we had trucks and dolls. Our girls put the dolls on the truck and made them beautiful. And my son ran the dolls over with the truck, right? Yeah. And I think that there is something to this. There are experiments with kids, 6-month-old, you have a train noise going on the background. The boys are excited and the girls just don't like the noise, right? So I really believe that there are gender differences, but you can't really know because the socialization is so strong. So one of the things that we did, we went to a place in Office, India, in which it's a matrilineal society. So women are in charge. All real estate belongs to women. They have all the money. It's still not matriarchal, so men still run the village, for example, but it's much more balanced. And over there, we didn't find gender differences in competition. So if the education is starting early enough, then you don't find the gender differences. I think that more importantly, from an entrepreneur side and things like that, is to think about how you design the workplace. So imagine that women negotiate less than men. It could be because women are not as good negotiators. I don't think that's the case. I think that if you'll go into a room and be extremely aggressive versus I'll go to a room, I'm 55, gray hair, funny accent, I'll be the man, right? That's good. That's the kind, that is a tough negotiator. You'll go, well, they'll use a different adjective to this, right? So the same behavior is going to get very different reaction from the audience, right? Now, the question is why so much depends on things that were like that. And something that we are working on now, and I think it's really important, is that the workplace was designed, think about the 50s Mad Men kind of environment, where women at best were secretaries, men did whatever they want, and then everything was done according to the preferences of men. So the workplace, I'll give you another example. My daughter is a software engineer. She had an interview. The interview was over Zoom, half an hour. She got a code that she needed to do under a lot of pressure, 3 people watching her, and she is doing this under time pressure in half an hour. She got the job, but the job had nothing to do with time pressure. Now, if you want to recruit a fighter pilot, they need to do well under pressure, right? If you want to get a programmer that writes codes and it takes them weeks to do, why are you doing this? A lot of the things that we are doing are biased towards men. In the example that I gave with the software engineer, you're more likely to hire a man if a man behaves better under pressure.
Yeah.
But not because they are better, right? So you're going to get the less good people that are just better under pressure.
Mixed signals again. If that's not the goal,
Exactly.
I hope it's not the goal to only hire men.
I hope the goal is not to hire more men, but to get the best people, right?
Exactly. Yeah, aligning the incentives matters.
Yeah.
Can you recommend any resources? Clearly, read the book. This is a fantastic resource, first step. But once they do that, how do you recommend that entrepreneurs learn more about behavioral economics and all of these things that you've been studying?
So there are a bunch of good books. So my friend John List, for example, published The Voltage Effect a year ago. My friend Nissa Westerlund and her colleagues published the No Club. I don't know if you heard about it.
I haven't yet. Thank you.
It's very interesting. So it's about, basically, you talked about gender, how women get the non-promotable tasks in a company, right? So, and how they should say no. There are also older books, but really much of it should be done with common sense. So one advice is use common sense much more, right? And test it. So if you use incentives, for example, if you try to use incentives, use common sense when you design them, but then do some kind of testing. Think about A/B testing, right? We do it but for the color of the fonts. Why not do it for incentives? Because very often I design incentives, I run them, doesn't work. I tweak it a bit until you find something. And people are really creative at gaming incentives. So you need to be careful that, don't underestimate the creativity of people. So just use these kind of things.
Do you have an example or a story where you thought an incentive was going to work and you were surprised when it didn't?
Oh, that's most of the stories that I have. Those are better stories. So it's important to understand that they always work, but not necessarily in the way you design them to work. So here's great incentives that maybe intuitively you wouldn't think. So the first hybrid cars were really bad. They were bad in the sense that you could pay less and get a better car. So why would anyone buy a bad car? Turns out that it was actually a great incentive that the car was bad, because if you cared about the environment, you bought the car. The only reason to buy a Prius or the equivalent of Honda at the time was because you wanted to signal that you care about the environment. You can signal to others, look, I'm a good guy. I'm driving a hybrid car in 2003. Today, Prius is a competitive car. Back then it wasn't. The fact that it was bad was actually a great incentive. So who would have imagined that the fact that your car is bad is actually good for sales, right?
Right.
And by the way, the one that really understood it were Toyota, right? So in 2003, both Honda and Toyota came with a new design. Honda used the Honda Civic, basically changed the engine, but made everything else. Probably the engineer told them that's the easiest, the most efficient way to do it. And Toyota completely changed the car. So when you drove into the parking lot with the Honda, there was a small plaque at the back saying it's a hybrid car. Not very impressive. You drove in with the Prius, everyone said, wow, this person really cares about the environment. Otherwise, why would he drive it? But everyone knew that you're doing this, so it signaled to others. Yeah. So Toyota was very smart in really using this signal of, look, I'm driving a bad car. Give me some respect.
That's wild. Wild. I love that story so much. So tell me, are there any ongoing or upcoming research projects, maybe that's related to incentives? Maybe it's something new altogether that you're especially excited about?
I'm really excited about pay to quit. So, pay to quit is something that I'm trying to convince companies to do. There were a few that did it, but on a very limited basis. And what I really care about is trying to get companies that, look, we need to fire people, say. Now, who are you going to fire? And they usually think what you look at knowledge, success, whatever, all the usual parameters that you should clearly care about. One thing that we ignore is motivation, how motivated the person is to work for you. And I think that that's really important. The problem is that if I ask you, look, how motivated are you to work for me? You'll always say, well, of course I'm excited. You won't say, oh, it's Monday morning. I really don't want to be here. I wish I was somewhere else, right? So that's not asking you is not very useful. We need to do what economists call incentive compatible. We need to give you incentives and see what you choose. So here's an example. Say that my dean comes to me and say, oh, here's $20,000 that I'll pay you if you leave. Now, I don't want you to leave, but if you want to leave, take the money and go. Now, what you'll get is that people that are on the fence will say, okay, I'll take the $20,000 and we'll go. And those people, even if they were good before, at this stage, if they're not motivated to be with you, not motivated enough that some bonus like this will get them out the door, it's actually good for you that they leave, because our value to our company depends on how much we like to be there, how much we are motivated to work for them. The more we are, the better we are. And the people that will choose to stay will actually, first of all, will have to justify it to themselves, right? So I just gave up $20,000. I need to make sure that they didn't do it because I'm an idiot, right? So they're going to work harder because of that. And second, we learned that they are motivated. Now we know that they are motivated to work for me. So you get this combination that I think is very useful.
That's fascinating. What's been the pushback from companies? What are they worried about?
There are some legitimate concerns. For example, it could be that the people that can get jobs elsewhere are the people that will move, right? So the people that are more employable will be the first to move. That's one worry. And there are other legitimate worries, but I still think that this would be. So if one of your listeners is interested in trying to implement this, please contact me. I'll be very happy to work with it. There are some programs, by the way, early retirement in some places that work on the same same idea.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Or even like severance offers to some extent kind of plays in that same thought process, I would feel like. Amazing. Okay. Final question for you. If you could, and I feel like you've done this really brilliantly, but maybe you'll come up with a different response. If there was one piece of advice that you've learned during your career in behavioral economics that you believe every entrepreneur should know, maybe it is the common sense, or maybe you want to expand on that, or maybe it's something else entirely, what would you like to impart to them?
That incentives work. So if you don't, so the example that I like is you went to a bad Japanese restaurant and your conclusion is that Japanese food is bad. No, you went to a bad restaurant. The same is true with incentives. If many times I go to companies, I talk with people and they say, we tried incentives and it didn't work. Well, there are different ways of implementing incentives. What you did didn't work. Think about it, try to find, like we said, the common sense and go out and try again, because incentives work. There is no question. We are all motivated by incentives. Right, and that's the one thing. And second, the testing. Do the A/B testing kind of thing. So don't just assume that you know what's going to happen.
Do you have any piece of follow-up advice that you've found for structuring A/B tests? Is it just separating out the people and having a control and remembering everything we learned in high school science, or do you have any words of wisdom for running an A/B test?
You gave A/B testing, that's the online. It doesn't have, think about the hospitality example that you gave. It could be that people will appreciate champagne. It could be that they'll appreciate breakfast. It could be that they'll appreciate some kind of tour. Try each one of them and try to follow up on people and see, first of all, ask them. Then try to see how likely they are to come back and things like that, right? So what's the success rate?
Yes.
It's very simple.
That's fantastic. That necessity for data is so important because as humans, we're really bad at accurately predicting how we're going to act in the face of different incentives. So that's such fantastic advice. Thank you so much for sharing your genius with us, for talking us through and giving a bit of the highlights from your book. I absolutely recommend everybody going out and picking this up for even more examples, even more stories. I appreciate your time very much.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for listening or watching to today's Brand Gravity Show episode. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. I learned so much both from Uri's book and also from our chat today. And if you haven't yet, please leave a 5-star review. It helps amazing humans like you find this show to improve their brands so that they can also change the world with what they know. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time.